Welcome to another episode of the 10-Minute Land Surveyor. The other day I was looking through the shop and I ran across a Lenker rod. For those of you who are not familiar with a Lenker rod, they're technically, they're really called a direct reading rod. Lenker was the brand name. Similar to Kleenex is actually a facial tissue, or a crescent wrench is actually an adjustable wrench. Lenker owned the market and they became the Lenker rod. What they were is a direct reading rod. The difference between a Lenker rod and a Philly rod is they read in opposite directions. Look at the screen here. The Lenker rod is shown here on the right. You notice how the numbers decrease as you go up. On a Philly rod, the numbers decrease as you go down. So this would be 3.9 and 3.8, and this would be 3.9 and 3.8. They read in opposite directions. Now, the reason that you would use a Lenker rod or a direct reading rod is it eliminated the one step of having to read the rod, minus that from your HI to calculate to get an elevation. A direct reading rod is the elevation that you read, or what you read in the rod is the elevation. So for example, if your rod was at, if you were at an elevation of 104.00, you would set your rod here at 104. Everywhere you went would be relative to that. After every shot you took after that would be relative to that. So it's a direct reading rod and it tells you the elevation. Now, if you look at the screen on a Lenker rod, you'll see that this is a clamp and it has a little nipple on the end that goes in a hole shown here. There's a hole, you see them all throughout, up and down. So this is what locks the plate in place. If you loosen the rod up, you'll notice that these numbers move and the rod doesn't move with it, like this. That's how the Lenker rod works. It's on a track. So when you have a Lenker rod, you look at, you read the rod. So for example, if you're reading an elevation here, like I said, was a 104, and the person reading the rod was at a 102, you would go up like this until you get to 4. You'd mark it with your thumb and you'd get it in place. Then you would take this clamp and you'd put it in place and screw it in. And that clamp is shown here on the screen, and you'd lock it in. Then the process was, so now you would turn it back to the party chief. They would look at it, but not without jacking the rod, which this was called jacking the rod. You move it up and down. You notice that the rod is moving up and down, but the plate is not. So you would double check. The party chief would read a number on here and confirm that yes, you were at 104. And once the rod was set, then the next step would be reading the brass, is what they called it. And if you look at the screen here, right here, this is a brass clamp. Both of these are under tension. They have springs here. And so you would use your palm, push this in, and move the rod up and down. But then you would read the brass. So in this case, it would be at 270. And the reason you would do that is you wanted to make sure that if that rod slipped or moved, or that face had moved, that you had a sense that it happened. And so you'd read the brass. The next step would be to write that brass down on the back of the rod. And so what the practice of the day was, is you would take masking tape and you would put it down the back of the rod. Now this rod has been out of commission for many years, so I had to put the masking tape back on. But you would use masking tape down the back of the rod, and you would write 270 there. Then as you were out leveling around and putting elevations on, it was the job of the person on the rod to periodically check to make sure that brass hadn't moved, because if that reading changed, that means your rod slipped. If the rod slipped, it meant you were getting bad elevations. And so this was an incredible time saver. However, it was not without its peril. So you say, well, why would you do that? Well, a couple different reasons. One is we would, it would eliminate the step of reading the rod, writing down the rod reading, and then doing the math by subtracting to get the elevation. It was a direct reading. So you'd read the rod, you had the elevation, so you would call it out, write it down. So it eliminated a mathematical step, which was a lot of time savings. Well, why wouldn't you use the instrument? Well, at the time that we used these, The instruments that we used, there's a couple different things. One is that we had to read verniers to get vertical. And even in the early days, we had, the instruments actually only measured slope distance. And so it was a hassle, and there was a lot of potential for error, and we didn't trust the verticals, the verniers on our instruments. And then even after it became electronic, we didn't have things to plug in the way that we used to now, like a data collector that would do all the calculations for you. And so you would put everything in the ground horizontally, get a linker rod out, and level through it. That was just the process due to the technology. And due to the technology today, it's very unlikely we'll ever use a linker rod again. But it was a heck of a time saver. So put away your clown shoes, pack away your mini bikes, and when you put that linker rod in the corner of the shop, never to be touched again, have a little respect. It was a great, great instrument for its day. Thank you and have a nice day.